I'm trying to make a game in Unity, and this is part 2. I left off day 1 with 3 major tasks. Setting up multiple ground layers so that in the long term I could create collision, but also get rid of the void of nothingness around assets. Number 2, being able to open scripts with Visual Studio. And 3, confirming what tile size all of my tiles are, and if characters and environment must all be the same size, for example, 16 by 16. So the first task I decided to do, as it was slightly bothering me, and I felt I truly just needed to download it for it to work, was get Visual Studio running within Unity. I went to the Microsoft Store and downloaded Visual Studio Code. Then I was able to set it up as my default script editor and open up the player movement script I had created previously. This was a nice quick win. And I immediately after found Unity Playground, which is how you create 2D games without needing to know how to code. But that's fine, I am now set up for both methods, so double win. So I decided to pause playing with the player movement script and instead added and downloaded the Unity Playground to my assets. I decided to do the corresponding Unity Learn lesson. As I was working through this set of lessons, I realized I could move around my view of the scene easily. This was something that for some reason I couldn't do all of a sudden on day 1, and all I needed to do was select the view tool and I could drag the scene around, instead of just scrolling out and then back in. Another win. I tried to do this with the tile palette with no luck, so I asked ChatGPT, and it said scrolling is how you move around the tile palette. However, you can drag with the middle mouse button, which has been absolutely life-changing. So this has been a day of absolute wins for me. I was then able to add movement with a couple of clicks to my lesson spaceship. I then went over to apply this new knowledge to my own project. My character has movement. Too much movement. Apparently, I can change that by adjusting the friction under the rigid 2D component. I do not see friction. ChatGPT was giving me an alternate way to add friction, but I couldn't find that either. I spent a couple hours looking on forums and trying to research how to do this. So either the advice is outdated or my view is incorrect. I am on the debug view in the inspector as that seems to show more options. A few hours go by and I still can't seem to get it. Slight rage. I feel like I'm missing something very simple. I followed up with ChatGPT and it was like, as I mentioned before, and suggesting that friction is within a collider 2D component, which I'm not seeing. It is now Monday morning. And as a side note, it snowed last week, and I got really excited and I ripped down my $4 IKEA paper blinds that I have in my office, so I could lay in my beanbag chair, read, and feel like I was in my own little snow globe with big windows. Now, Monday morning, I recall why the blinds were there, as the sun tries to burn the side of my head and makes it hard to look at my monitors. Those blinds were only supposed to be temporary when we moved in 5 years ago, so I guess I should deal with that now. Moving on. So I decided to try out the coding method. It seemed pretty straightforward to follow along in a guide even though I didn't quite know what each line did. I have an idea, but then again I'm typing something similar 3 different times in 3 different sections. It was going very smooth until I had to add something to the inspector, but I couldn't find the option. It worked in the guide, but not for me. I decided to hit play on the game just to see if I could walk around, and I got hit with a bunch of errors. The reason why, based on the errors I was getting, or at least what I understood to be happening, was to do with the assets I had imported earlier. It advertises animations such as walk, and I just added a bunch of perimeters around movement, and so now I have duplicates. Something I didn't notice until I ran it through ChatGPT. I assumed I was working with a pretty default blank script and only focused on the things I was adding. So easy enough, I removed the duplicates. But I continued to get errors. Errors that prevented me from even hitting play. It sounds like there was still old code from the assets, or that code was pointing in different directions, and the new code that I wrote was clashing with it. I did quite a bit of searching online until I just gave up and just copy and pasted every single error plus the current script to ChatGPT to review the code, and even then, this still took a lot of work. Every time I made an adjustment, I would still have errors, or I'd have different errors So I still had to kind of talk back and forth with ChatGPT until I could get it to work. And this took about 5 rounds of revisions. And even then, with each revision, I took my time line by line reviewing what changed and copied those individual changes myself into the appropriate areas. And the reason for that was to understand what am I changing and why. Finally, I could then add move as a behavior under the player events. And ta-da! I can move, and this time it's not like a spaceship. But I'm going to be honest, do not ask me to change anything other than the speed at this point in time. I honestly thought at this point, based on how quick I was able to paint from day one, that I'd have like the entire player home instance map done. And I'm sure if I had focused on building out my layers and tiles, I could have, but I think this was needed. I needed to be able to just move a basic character around, and it was bothering me. I did do a little research on character environment and sizes, and I think the tiles that I have now are fine. However, I think it's something I'll look into a bit more later on, and that's fine for now because I do think I'll create a lot of my own assets. I don't think I'm going to create like grass and dirt. There's no sense of reinventing the wheel when I've already paid for assets, but I do think I will try and create a lot of my own eventually. And maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe everything I need is here, or maybe, another $20 or $40 asset pack. But for now, I'm just going to leave the tiles in this scene. And now it is about that time to wrap up this video. Part 2 was simple, as it was all focused around movement, but at the same time, very productive. I was able to learn basic movement in Unity Playground. Moving around Unity itself became much easier, such as within the scene and tile palette, and of course my first time diving into the code. And now I finally get to start making my ground layers for my next video. And of course, as I wrap this up, I am seeing a warning about rendering compatibility. A quest for another day. Oh, and I also don't see my character in the blue game screen. I think that is something I should look into as well. Just not today. Well, that is it. That is everything for part 2. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that was somewhat helpful. And I don't know, maybe see you around.
Hi, I'm TiffyMissWiffy and welcome to my channel. Wait, what's wrong with my voice? Hi, I'm TiffyMissWiffy. Wait.
Ah, much better. It would seem I was just tired and in need of some caffeine. If you'd like to support a creator, check out my Ko-Fi page in the description below.